Here's why everyone is wrong about Bitcoin in the month of September, which the common sort of knowledge here is that September is the worst month for Bitcoin. Well, one, we've already disproven that with literal facts and data. Hard numbers indeed, as August is actually among the worst, a little bit worse than definitely September. And there's some other contenders as well. But September does have a really, really nuanced sort of position. So I want to be getting deep inside of that knowledge in this video because these are really my favorite videos to do because I think that they're just most appropriate for most people, which is, more long-term investors. Of course, it is Labor Day, so happy Labor Day to all of the celebrators out there. We are having a sale for 20% off of any one of the programs or services that we offer in the Teachable link in the description below with the code LABOR2025, exactly as you see on your screen right here. LABOR2025 gives you 20% off. Literally, there is no exclusions to this, and we'll get into maybe a little bit more of that later. But I do really want to focus this video on the big topic of the day. So, monthly statistics, but first we'll start with some daily statistics. And the daily statistics for Tuesday is, again, more or less a coin flip probability, whether the flips close positively or negatively, but we are, as always, significantly more interested in the average gain and the average loss for, in this case, Tuesdays, because these just play out so damn often. We see it so many times. I mean, basically throughout the full history of Bitcoin, but especially recently as well. Anyways, to the upside, when we have seen positive gaining Tuesdays, Bitcoin on average has gained about 2%. To put that into perspective, that would put Bitcoin at around 111,489. 111,489. Of course, to the downside, which is a little bit on the higher side for negative returns, 1.77 is the average negative return for red closing Tuesdays. And for reference, that would put Bitcoin somewhere around 107,350. I don't necessarily think that Bitcoin's going to close above or below any one of these levels for today. But if you do see a wick around these regions, in fact, you can kind of argue that this is already a wick to the top side over here, although not perfect. You're probably going to see a little bit of a pushback in the opposite direction, at least on the first pass. I don't think that we're going to do anything super significant today is what I'm trying to say. Now, we're not going to speak anymore about short-term price action analysis. Maybe we'll reference that at the very, very end of this video. But now I really want to focus on the higher term time frame. So if you are the kind of person who's looking at a fucking 5-minute, an hourly, a 4-hour time frame even, and you're like, hey, what? You're talking about this? How could that possibly be? Just relax. Okay, we're talking about very long term for you. It's probably not even relevant to you. In the short term, I do still think that Bitcoin is more or less in an area that is likely to bounce than go lower, even though I do think that lower will happen at some point during this month. Anyways, on to the statistics. So let's go over here, as always, as we get a new month. I go through each and every past month for Bitcoin's history and mark off major statistics for this. And September is a really, really interesting case because, yes, September actually is, generally not the best month for Bitcoin or crypto in general, or just markets in general, really. But there is a nuanced thing on top of that because September has a very, very critical event, which we'll get into a little bit later. But first, I'll just show you the straight up headline statistics. And yes, September, like I said, not the best month. Actually, sorry, I'm on the wrong one right now. Let me go to the actual right one. There we go. Lots of numbers today, baby. Lots of fucking numbers. Again, these are my favorite ones to do. For the true number nerds, this one is a heartfelt message to you. Anyways, September monthly, we've seen 6 green Septembers in Bitcoin's history, 6 out of 15. So that does give it about a 40% strike rate to close any September positively, which is very low, of course. But I just cannot understand why people are not paying attention to fucking August. August is worth, August, 5 out of 15. Not very good. Not very good. Anyways, back to September here. When we have seen losing Septembers, there's been an average loss of about just under 13%, with a median coming in around just over 8%. And on the other side, for the average winning Septembers, there are very few of them that do exist, although the last 2 Septembers actually have been winning Septembers. It has been about 7% and 5% for the median right there. So let's see what that would just blindly look like if we were to take that away from current price action. First, we'll go for the negative side. We already have the open, obviously, so if we shaved off about 5% to the downside, for reference, I would put Bitcoin very low 100s. I do think that is a possibility and a likelihood that we'll see at some point during September. Again, do things bounce first? Perhaps yes. If you're on the 1 hour time frame, or if you're on the fucking any time frame really lower than a weekly at this point, relax. These things are going to take some time. Of course, on the upper end, I think we were looking at about 12 or 13%. Just for reference, I'd put Bitcoin down around about $95,000. That number will come up a little bit later, but of course, one thing before the next. And I do look at the low $100,000 as a very, very critical region, just for the general sort of trajectory of Bitcoin here. Again, on the other side, I need to reference these again. Or sorry, median loss was 8%. Sorry, so that was that's going to be much lower. Or yeah, no, that will be about $100,000, give or take a little bit from that number. On the winning side, 7% and 5%, more or less the same there. If we were to add about 5% to the upside, Bitcoin would close this month out at about 114, maybe 115. Again, giving us some areas of interest if Bitcoin does choose the upside trajectory. I do think, like I said, there will be a bounce at some point in this month, probably earlier rather than later, but closing this month green, it would actually be a really, really good thing. We'll get into why that is later. I'm very much open-minded with this, but we'll go through these statistics hand in hand here. Anyways, yes, so here is the big thing as to why people are generally wrong about September, and just parrot this data without actually doing the work themselves. And look, anytime that you're watching my videos and looking at my data, I encourage you to fact check me as well. I understand that this is not reasonable for everyone because, you have fucking lives. I don't have a life. So I'll tell you what I'm doing for my birthday today. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to hit the bag for maybe like 10 to 12 rounds, something like this. Have a nice lift session, and then hang out with my beautiful Elsa to pass away the evening. This is my perfect day every day. I love it. I fucking love it. Anyways, yes, so here is why people are generally wrong about September. And again, feel free to check this work for yourself. September has a very, very, very important event that only happens 4 times in every year. It is called the quad witching. The quad witching is a major expiration of 4 major different contracts, basically. You got options, you got futures, you got index options, you got index futures, yada, yada. Basically, what you need to know is that this is the big liquid expiration date that really does matter. And, a lot of the time, you've probably seen these silly headlines from amazing crypto publications saying like, there's 10 billion expiring in options today. That doesn't mean shit. But these expirations definitely do mean shit. It's about the type of expiration that it is, because there are so many things expiring on these dates. Many major hedge fund and money managers use these highly liquid and very important quad witching dates to essentially drive, change around their portfolio. And the reason why the actual expiration date itself is not that important is because people are making decisions, a little bit before this to roll their positions into the next quarter. But ultimately, it's around that date that really does matter. But if you're looking for the exact date itself, it's not going to work like that. People don't make their decisions on the last day of of that time. Anyways, more to the point, because I understand that some of that is not relatable. If you're an options trader, you probably understand a little bit better. Anyways, so yes, quad witching date in September, very, very important. When does it happen? It happens the 3rd Friday of September, which is basically around the midpoint of September. So what we noticed here, and I want to give good credit to my man, Mr. Henry Wanaker of our community, because he first turned me on to this idea. I've taken a little, a few other steps alongside of it as well, but he kind of gave me the initial inspiration for this. And what I found is something super interesting for September. Just as we spoke about that quad witching date, which is effectively around the middle of September, I found that the Bitcoin September lows are generally around the middle of September as well. In fact, we have a very unique case here for the date of the month that typically produces the low for Bitcoin in September that is different than many other months. Many other months, usually the data is pretty similar in that you see the lows early on in the month if it's going to be a bullish month and or a positive closing month, and lows later in the month, at least after the 3rd week if it's going to be a negative closing month. Now, September is different. September sees the low of the month very close to the middle of the month, whether it is a positive or a negative closing in September, which is super interesting to me. So that kind of was a little bit of an insight as to how this idea evolved. And so we started to look at more and more data pertaining to this. And what we found is that if we measure from the time that that September 15th happens to the end of the month, it's actually almost always a positive time for Bitcoin. Out of like 15 prior, Septembers, 12 of those have closed positively from the 15th to the 30th, the last day of September. If we flip that around, which I actually did because I just wanted to see, if we flip that around for just looking at the 1st of September to the 15th of September, it's very much weighted in favor of negative time. So if we're gonna see a period of downside, probably happens in the beginning of September. Again, these are just statistics. This is about just under 43% for the 1st to the 15th being green. So, highly weighted in favor of negative for that first portion. But the 15th to the 30th is extremely weighted in favor of positive times here. So my sort of theory with this is that with the quad witching happening around that time, big money managers are kind of flipping their summer positions, rolling them over into the fourth quarter and generally positioning, in that direction. And these are the people who really do move the markets. It's not like the Shadow Lizard Council, even though we make jokes about this all the time. It's not the fucking whales and shit like this. It's these people. These people are the ones that actually do have the power to move markets and actually have the motivation to move markets as well. It's also not the market makers. So the fucking lobotomized morons out there in the world, I can assure you it is not. You place all of your angst on an imaginary boogeyman because you don't understand what the fuck they do to begin with. I speak on this as a former market maker, authorized trader in equity options. Market makers do not trade direction. They trade delta neutral. Holy shit. It's like literally the whole fucking point of the job. But anyways, I digress before getting onto a massive tirade about these absolutely lobotomized fucking idiots who have no clue how these things work, speaking in absolute certainties. Anyways, yes. Of which I do a little bit of that myself. Anyway, so yes, so for the 1st to the 15th, the average negative return during that time, which is the more likely thing to happen, is around 10.5%, which is like pretty fucking bad, to be fair, like pretty fucking bad. If Bitcoin were to play out a 10% move to the downside from the open, which we already had, yesterday, that would put Bitcoin a little bit below $100,000, which is interesting. And by the way, we'll go over open to low data a little bit later. This is gonna be a long video. I'll already let you know. To the other side, if Bitcoin were to have a positive first couple weeks of September, an average gain of about 5.5% to 6%, that's kind of in alignment with the positive closing September to begin with. That put Bitcoin somewhere around 115. So if you do see Bitcoin around 115 before or around, the 15th of September, then it's probably a good high for this month, to be fair. But here's the thing. It's really the focus on the back half. The back half is the focus here because that is one that is very, very high probability. 80% is fucking high when it comes down to these things. You don't see that all that often. And the average return for the gaining periods coming into the back half of September is about 4%. That doesn't sound like much to crypto crazy people, but I can assure you that 4%, at these big numbers is many, many thousands of dollars. I mean, more than about $5,000 actually. So keep that in mind. If Bitcoin were to plot something like that, which again, this is just an average. It might be a little bit more, it might be a little bit less, but probably somewhere in that ballpark. You're probably looking at, multi-$1,000 increase from the midpoint of September to the end of September. So there is real edge there in my opinion. Now moving on from there and going back to this chart here, we can also look at the, I have Bitcoin August low, sorry. It's just, didn't update that name here, but I can assure you that all this data is pertaining to September. I literally just did it yesterday and this morning. But yeah, the Bitcoin September open to low data. So I'm measuring from the open of the month to the low of the month. So not the close of the month, but just the lowest point of the month. We found that for positive closing Septembers, that differential has been actually kind of large, to be honest, around 5%. The average coming in a little bit over 6%, the median coming in around about 4%. So again, we get that 5% number. 5% number in this case, it would be applied to the downside. But so even in a positive closing September, so again, I want to focus on the statement, even in Septembers that close positively, we still expect generally on average about 5% downside from open to low. Again, there's varying degrees of how this works out, and the positive closing Septembers are limited. But yeah, for reference, I'd put Bitcoin at very low 100s. So that is not a crazy number to expect at some point in this month, even if Bitcoin were to bounce back up before the end of the month and close the month green. It's very possible here, very fucking possible. On top of this, if we were to go to negative closing Septembers, now this gets a little more scary. So I do want to acknowledge that there is a major outlier here for 2011. The differential was almost 50%. Every other thing is significantly less than that. So we're going to go with the median for these numbers at 15.82 because that's going to be probably a little more accurate. Again, this is probably, or sorry, did I say 15? Yes, 15 spot 82. So, looking at this for reference, if it is going to be a really red September, low 90s is not out of the question here. Like I said, I do think September opens up on a bounce. In fact, it looks like it's bouncing a little bit right now as U.S. markets do open beautifully for the new month of September. But yeah, anyways, my point is that between now and the middle of September is all about survival. And like, is Bitcoin actually going to make the downside move then, or is it going to do it later? Because if it does it later, probably going to be a negative month. If it does it sooner, probably going to be a positive month, and there's going to be a major opportunity around the midpoint of September. That is my major point right here. If you stayed on this video for this long, I really hope that sinks in, not to use like a bad fucking meme, pun, whatever the fuck, because all of this data kind of points towards that. Basically, if you see Bitcoin down the first half of September and then start to rally a little bit back around the midpoint of September, there's probably a very, very, very nice, at least short-term trade there. For these timeframes. Now, here's the thing. When we go even further and look at the HPDR, I do want to acknowledge that these downside targets really do have validity here. I personally was not thinking that it had as much validity until I looked at this, but the monthly HPDR, which has been living below the median for quite some time now, has seen the 38.2 level drop here. So this is not to say that this is a magnet for price action, but it is an area of interest that Bitcoin does come down here. And where is it right now? It is at $92,500, which is eerily similar to what we saw earlier in alignment with those monthly statistics, meaning that if Bitcoin gets down around there, we're very likely looking at a big bounce. Hopefully it's a reversal, but very likely looking at a big bounce. But it adds validity to that lower area of interest if Bitcoin does make a leg down. And of course, I would not be looking for a move all the way down to like mid or low 90s until Bitcoin actually successfully closes, below $100,000. $100,000 should in theory be, nice psychological even number to kind of be mindful of. But fair enough. On top of this, when we go over here and check out our higher term timeframe stochastic momentum, again with the new update for this month of September, we can see a few things. One, the monthly actually continues to the upside here, but this is 1 billion million quadrillion, in my opinion, percent important to hold above this monthly momentum pivot for Bitcoin. If it does not by the end of this month, I do think it further validates what I've been espousing on this channel for quite some time now, that Bitcoin is in a long-term corrective period with downside, sideways and downside implied. And this could last anywhere between 3 to 6 months, I would imagine. It's a big time frame, but I don't fucking know exactly when it's going to end. I just know that I wouldn't want to be, positioned to the upside during that time. Anyways, that number, that pivot is 102,500. You'll notice that number is actually above both of those realistic corrective targets. Even in positive closing September's, the low of the month has been about 5% away. That puts Bitcoin at $100,000. So that level will get tested. That also means that it is imperative for Bitcoin to hold above there, especially by end of month, to retain this value. Now, here's why I think it's maybe a moot point. All higher term timeframes point in a similar direction. The weekly time frame is continuing to the downside here, below 118,350, which seems rather likely to me by the end of this week. But hey, crazy things have happened. The 10-day time frame is going to be loading, but it will also be positioned to the downside if we can get it to load. Come on, baby, show me the fucking numbers. It's always embarrassing. TradingView embarrassing me. How dare you? I pay premium for you and you don't even work barely. 121,650 is the magical number right here. Again, coming down below the critical zone for the first time in a very long time. All of the highs in this current market cycle since 2023 began did come within this zone here. These were all 3 to 7 month long consolidations, sideways and down. The bi-weekly time frame is also freshly crossing the downside, but again, it's going to take a while to load because fucking TradingView. Why does it take so long to load? I don't know. Same thing over here, also on bearish divergence. I should add 117 is the magical number right there. The monthly time frame we already went over. The bi-monthly time frame is maybe even a little bit scarier here because below 111,700, not by the end of this month, but by the end of course, the next month, October, then this one will also cross the downside, and all crosses, regardless of where they've come from, have actually been the end of prior market cycles. Again, I actually don't think that this is going to look like prior market cycles But yeah, and then the quarterly, of course, that one's gonna be closing at the end of this month, and I actually don't know exactly where it is. Oh, it's 109. Wow. So if this one crosses the downside, just another fucking nail in the coffin for Bitcoin for, in my opinion, the foreseeable future. I'm not calling a major, massive bear market with Bitcoin down to $50,000 and shit like that. No, but I do think that Bitcoin would be very likely to begin a multi-month period of sideways and down, maybe at least low 90s probably, and maybe even sees like mid 80s. I don't know. We'll see. Again, that's really, really far away. I'm not making any statement about that as of right now. I'm just going off the numbers, just going off statistics. If you can't understand that, get the fuck off this channel, because you're just going to drive yourself crazy because you do not fucking understand. And I'm not going to take the time to explain it to you. I'm sorry. But you have ChatGPT. It's infinitely compassionate, infinitely patient, and it will sit through you through the most silly of silly questions and hold your hand. I use it all day, so I have no judgment here. But I'm not going to fucking do it because I don't have the patience for it, okay? Anyways, yes. So there's that, and that. Those are big pivots for the end of this month, of course. What else do we have that I wanted to get into? Yeah, of course, over here for monthly, if I can go to Bitcoin, or I guess this is also equally as important, monthly tether dominance bottoming in the same area that we have seen create the bottoms for this current cycle, bottoms on tether dominance, which were tops on Bitcoin, obviously. Over here, monthly for Bitcoin spot, we can see a couple of things. One, there is potential for 1, 2, 3 drives of bearish divergence. If Bitcoin really comes back down and closes September below the red moving average, which is about 107. So as of right now, we've seen a test down to that number. I would go as far to say if you see Bitcoin even come back down below that number again, I don't really even need to see a closure at that point. I do think that things are going to come down at that point, very likely to at least $100,000, give or take a little bit from that number. Yes, there'll be short-term time frame stops along the way. Obviously, they don't move in a straight line, but just be aware of that. For right now, especially opening this up this month on a bit of a bounce, I do think that there is some hopium. And always, statistics are statistics. They're just telling you what's likely. They're not telling you what's a certainty. There's no way to know what's certainty. I don't care who the fuck you listen to on the internet. In my experience, there is nothing at all whatsoever as certainty in trading or investing, or really most decisions that actually matter. It's all probabilities. Anyways, so that's pretty much it for me on Bitcoin. Going over when, to expect a bit of a turn. What happens before then? Generally it's more likely to be down in the first couple, in the first 15 days of September. If it is going to be down, we're probably looking somewhere around low 100s. If that level gives way, then, we're probably looking at low 90s. If something like that happens. By the same token, until Bitcoin actually even comes back down below September 1st low, which is 107 or so, I think hopium is fine here, I suppose. Looking at the shorter term timeframes, there's plenty of reasons to believe that there is going to be a short term timeframe bounce. We've been saying the same thing for a while about this. This balance could, easily pop up to like 114, 115, maybe even 116. In fact, we do have a meta signal set up over here, which, by the way, if you're not on Twitter or on X and following them, I strongly suggest it, just because they post a lot of this shit for free. Like, they have a service that costs a lot of money. It's a really fucking good service, but they even give away a lot of this stuff for free. Anyways, this one fired off at 109,400. So it's an 8-hour time frame. So higher term time frame here. It's actually a rather stronger strategy signal here at the 1.0. These are, in my experience, the best ones and the most likely to really play out. But as always, they give you probabilities alongside targets. That is the beauty of this thing. And target number 1, which is all the way at 113 and change, has a nearly 74.25% probability to be hit within about 5 bars. So 5 bars on an 8-hour time frame is what? That is going to be 30 hours. So that doesn't sound right. 40 hours. Jesus Christ, man. I'm losing it. Wow. For 40 hours, that's what, just under a couple days. Again, these are averages, not exact. Target number 2 is 57.5% probability, and that's all the way at 117. I do think target number 3 is extremely unlikely, but hey, crazier things have happened. And like I said, I would keep an open mind for this bounce to start off this month. So this is one of the big reasons why I do think Bitcoin will bounce start off this month. I've also just seen generally just straight down for the past 2 to 3 weeks. So it's like, what's a balance in between here? Still a trend. So anyways, my point is that it's going to be very, very imperative for Bitcoin, if you do want to be bullish and continue to see this market move to the upside in the short term, over the next couple months, hold above 107. Below 107, I do think, you might have a short-term stop at 106 or something like that, but I don't think it's going to hold. I do think it's, you're looking at $100,000, give or take. That should be a big bounce there. and then we'll come back to it and see after that. But yeah, if you are more long-term minded, then hopefully this video was of some value to you. Again, I really enjoy doing these more long-term videos. I understand that this video is certainly a lot longer itself, and of course, like I said, we do have a sale going on for Labor Day. It'll be lasting until next Monday. The code is Labor 2025 with 20% off of any one of the programs or services. I have made now the update official for the formerly named Trade Like a Quant program. Now has been renamed to Crown's Trading Bible because it literally just has all of my informational programs in here. That does not mean that it includes these babies over here. The indicator scripts, those continue to stay as their own services, just to be super blunt, super just direct. But for the for the Master Your Options program, for the Trading Psychology program, for the Classical TA program, for Quantitative Analysis program, all of these have been put into the Crown's Trading Bible, and it is there for you now. The price has increased, obviously, but you can now get 20% off, and we do offer payment plans as well. I really want to give, like college students, an opportunity to get into something like this, because this is honestly what I wish I had in college. And I understand that, the price at face value probably unreasonable for most college people. So that's why we also offer monthly payment plans as well. Anyways, that's enough shilling for one day. As always, I want to wish everyone the best of best. Nice little start to September with a little bit of a bounce there. Keep your eyes on those major numbers. I know that we spit out a lot, but you can always reference this video in the future. I will have timestamps. And with that said, wishing you the best of best as always. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully Wednesday for another live stream action.